The insistent ringing of her phone jolted Abby Miller awake. She fumbled in the darkness, knocking over a half-empty mug of yesterday's coffee before her fingers closed around the vibrating device. The clock on her nightstand read 2:17 a.m. No good calls came at this hour. Hello? She answered, her voice thick with sleep. Where the hell are you? The baby won't stop crying and I can't find the formula. You said you'd be back by midnight. The man's voice was deep, authoritative, and completely unfamiliar. Abby sat upright, suddenly wide awake. I think you have the wrong number. A pause followed, then, This isn't Jessica. No, this is Abby. You've dialed the wrong— Wait, the man interrupted, his tone shifting from frustration to something more measured. Your voice sounds exactly like hers, Abby sighed, running a hand through her tangled hair. Well, I'm not Jessica, and I don't know anything about a baby or formula. She was about to hang up when she heard the unmistakable wail of an infant in the background, the sound so desperate it made her maternal instincts stir, despite having no children of her own. The man on the other end of the line swore softly. I'm sorry to bother you at this hour. It's just, I'm at my wit's end here. Something in his voice, vulnerability beneath the obvious wealth and power, made Abby hesitate. Is the baby okay? I don't know. He won't stop crying. Jessica left hours ago for what was supposed to be a quick errand, and now I can't reach her. I've never been alone with him this long before. Abby glanced at her small studio apartment, at the pile of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter, visible in the moonlight streaming through her window. She'd been laid off from the bookstore last month, and job interviews had been scarce. Sleep wasn't coming back any time soon anyway. Do you have a pen? I'll tell you how to make formula properly. 20 minutes later, after walking this stranger through the basics of preparing a bottle and soothing techniques for infants, Abby heard the baby's cries subside. The relief in the man's voice was palpable when he said, Thank you. I'm Jackson Bennett, by the way. Abby nearly dropped her phone. Everyone in Boston knew that name. Jackson Bennett, CEO of Bennett Enterprises, one of the largest tech companies on the East Coast. His face regularly appeared in business magazines and local news. Recently widowed, if she remembered correctly, though she hadn't heard anything about a baby. Abby Miller, she replied, suddenly self-conscious despite being alone in her apartment. Glad I could help. You saved me tonight, Abby Miller. How can I repay you? She laughed softly. It was just some basic baby advice. Basic to you, perhaps. Revolutionary to me. There was a pause before he continued. This is unorthodox, but would you consider coming to work for me? As a night nanny? I'll pay triple whatever your current salary is. Abby's thoughts flashed to her dwindling bank account and the stack of rejection letters from job applications. Mr. Bennett, you don't even know me. I know you're kind enough to help a desperate stranger at 2 a.m, patient enough to walk an incompetent father through baby care, and knowledgeable enough to make it work. That's more qualification than anyone else I've interviewed. Plus, he added with a touch of humor, you've already been vetted by my security team since you've been on the phone with me for nearly half an hour. The offer was tempting, almost too good to be true, but Abby had learned early in life that when something seemed too perfect, it usually was. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, though I warn you, I'll be calling back regardless. You're the only one who's managed to get little Thomas to sleep tonight. The next morning, Abby couldn't shake the surreal phone conversation from her mind. She had just poured herself a cup of coffee when her phone rang again. Jackson Bennett's number. Good morning, Mr. Bennett, she answered, trying to sound professional despite being in her pajamas. Ms. Miller, I hope I didn't wake you again. No, I've been up. How's Thomas? Mercifully still asleep. About last night's offer. I'll take it, Abby said before she could talk herself out of it. What did she have to lose? Excellent. Can you start tonight? I have a car service that can pick you up. That evening, as the sleek black car pulled up to her apartment building, Abby felt a flutter of nervousness. The driver loaded her single suitcase into the trunk, and they set off toward the affluent Beacon Hill neighborhood. Bennett's home was exactly what she expected, a historic brownstone with tasteful modernizations, imposing yet somehow still warm. Jackson met her at the door himself, a tall man with dark hair peppered with gray at the temples, still in his business suit, but with the tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. In his arms was a fussing infant no more than 3 months old. Ms. Miller, he greeted her with obvious relief. Perfect timing. Thomas just woke up. Abby dropped her bag and automatically reached for the baby. Jackson transferred him carefully, and Thomas immediately quieted in her arms. The way the baby looked at her with curious, intelligent eyes made her heart melt a little. "He likes you," Jackson observed, surprise evident in his voice. "Babies can sense tension," Abby explained, gently bouncing Thomas. "You were probably holding him too tight." Jackson led her through the house, showing her the nursery with its state-of-the-art monitoring system and the adjoining guest suite where she would stay. Everything was impeccably decorated, but with a certain sterility that suggested a home designed rather than lived in. As they settled in the kitchen, and Abby prepared a bottle with practiced ease, Jackson watched her intently. "You seem very comfortable with him. Do you have children of your own?" "No," she replied, testing the formula temperature on her wrist. "But I practically raised my younger siblings after my mother got sick. 4 of them. And your father? Left when I was 12. Decided family life wasn't for him." She kept her voice neutral, though the abandonment still stung 15 years later. Jackson nodded thoughtfully. "Jessica, his mother, she's similar in some ways. Coming and going as she pleases." He hesitated, then added, "She's not my wife. She was a brief relationship. I didn't know about Thomas until she showed up on my doorstep a month ago, said he was mine, and that she needed a break. Then yesterday she disappeared again." Abby looked down at Thomas, now contentedly drinking his bottle, tiny fingers curled around her pinky. "Have you had a paternity test?" she asked without thinking, then immediately regretted the personal question. "I'm sorry, that's none of my business. It's scheduled for next week," Jackson admitted, seeming unfazed by her directness. "Though it doesn't matter in some ways. I already love him." As the night progressed and Abby settled into her role, she couldn't help noticing certain things about the Bennett household. There were no photos of Jessica anywhere. Thomas's nursery, while beautifully appointed, lacked any personal touches a mother might add. And Jackson, for all his apparent wealth and power, seemed utterly alone in this massive house, except for the staff who departed at nightfall. Just before dawn, as Abby was rocking Thomas back to sleep after his feeding, Jackson appeared in the nursery doorway, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, looking as though he hadn't slept at all. "Is everything all right?" she whispered. He hesitated, then entered the room, his expression grave. Jessica called. "She's not coming back. I'm sorry, don't be. It's better this way, probably. Cleaner." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. But before she hung up, she said something strange. She said, "Ask your new nanny about the baby. She knows more than she's telling you." Jackson's eyes, sharp and suddenly suspicious, locked onto Abby's. "What did she mean by that, Ms. Miller? What do you know about my son?" The soft glow of the nursery lamp cast dramatic shadows across his features as he stepped closer. "Whose baby is this? Tell me the truth." Abby's heart pounded as she instinctively held Thomas closer. "Mr. Bennett, I swear to you, I've never met Jessica in my life. I didn't even know you had a child until our phone call last night." Jackson studied her face, his expression unreadable. "You have to understand how this looks. You appear out of nowhere, immediately connect with my son, and then Jessica makes that cryptic statement. I answered a wrong number," Abby reminded him, her voice stronger than she felt. "You called me, remember? Check your phone records if you don't believe me." For several tense seconds, Jackson remained silent, his gaze never leaving her face. Then, almost imperceptibly, his shoulders relaxed. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm not thinking clearly." Thomas stirred in Abby's arms, his little face scrunching momentarily before settling back into peaceful sleep. She gently placed him in his crib, then turned to face Jackson fully. "I understand you're under incredible pressure," she said quietly. "But if we're going to work together, there needs to be trust. I have no hidden agenda here. I'm just someone who needed a job and happened to know how to calm a baby." Jackson rubbed his eyes, the gesture making him look suddenly vulnerable, less the powerful CEO and more a man drowning in circumstances beyond his control. "You're right," he conceded. "And I'm not usually this paranoid. It's just, ever since Jessica showed up with Thomas, my life has been one surprise after another. None of them good." "Why don't you get some sleep?" Abby suggested. "You look exhausted, and Thomas will probably be down for another couple of hours. I'll be right here if he needs anything. You must be tired too." "I'm fine. Night owl by nature." Jackson nodded, seemingly too weary to argue. We'll talk more in the morning. My assistant will be here at 8 to review your employment contract and set up your direct deposit. After he left, Abby sank into the plush nursery rocking chair, her mind racing. What was Jessica playing at? Why would she make such an insinuation? The woman didn't even know Abby existed until a few hours ago when Jackson must have mentioned hiring a new nanny, unless a troubling thought crossed Abby's mind. What if there was something about her that Jessica recognized from Jackson's description? Some connection she was unaware of. Boston was a big city, but certain social circles could be surprisingly small. By morning, Abby had convinced herself she was overthinking things. Jessica's comment was likely nothing more than an attempt to create chaos in Jackson's life before disappearing again. As promised, Jackson's assistant arrived promptly at 8, a brisk, efficient woman named Meredith, who had Abby sign a stack of paperwork, including a surprisingly generous contract and a confidentiality agreement. By 9, Abby was officially employed, with her first month's salary already deposited into her account, an amount that made her do a double-take when she checked her banking app. Jackson emerged from his home office around noon, looking marginally better after a few hours of sleep, dressed in a fresh suit despite it being Saturday. Thomas was awake and alert in Abby's arms as she walked circles around the living room, pointing out different objects and naming them in the one-sided conversation that new babies required for development. "You're good with him," Jackson observed, watching from the doorway. "He's an easy baby, all things considered," Abby replied. "Very observant." Jackson approached cautiously, as though afraid to disturb the peaceful tableau. "May I?" he asked, reaching for Thomas. Abby transferred the baby to his father's arms, noting how Jackson's entire demeanor softened when holding his son, despite his obvious awkwardness. "Support his head a little more, yes, like that, perfect." "I called Jessica back," Jackson said after a moment, his eyes still on Thomas. "Several times. She's not answering." "I'm not surprised," Abby commented, then bit her lip. "Sorry, that was presumptuous. No, you're right. This is her pattern, apparently. Chaos and disappearance." He looked up at Abby. "I also checked my phone records. Our first conversation was indeed a misdial. The number is 1 digit off from Jessica's." Relief flooded through Abby. "Thank you for verifying that." "No, I should thank you for your patience. My behavior this morning was inexcusable." An uncomfortable silence fell between them, broken only by Thomas's soft cooing. Abby fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, suddenly aware of the vast disparity in their circumstances. Here she was, practically penniless until yesterday, standing in the living room of one of Boston's wealthiest men, discussing his missing— "What, girlfriend? Ex-baby mama? May I ask you something personal?" she ventured. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "You may ask." "I can't promise to answer. How much do you actually know about Jessica?" His expression tightened. "Less than I thought, evidently." He moved to the window, adjusting Thomas against his shoulder while gazing out at the garden below. "We met at a charity gala last year. Dated briefly, very briefly. It ended amicably, I thought. Then 4 months ago, she called to tell me she was pregnant. Said the timing lined up with our relationship, and you believed her. I had no reason not to. We were careful, but these things happen." He turned to face Abby. "Then she disappeared until a month ago when she showed up with Thomas, already a few weeks old. Said she'd tried to handle it on her own but couldn't. Needed help, financial and otherwise. So you took them both in?" Jackson nodded. "I set Jessica up in the guest house out back. Hired nannies, made arrangements, but she was inconsistent, erratic. Some days completely absorbed with Thomas, others completely absent. The nannies kept quitting because she would interfere with their schedules, then disappear for days. The picture coming together in Abby's mind wasn't flattering to Jessica. And the paternity test? Why wait until now? She refused at first. Said it was insulting. Then last week she finally agreed. It's scheduled for Monday." He glanced down at Thomas, sleeping peacefully against his chest. "Though as I said before, it almost doesn't matter now." Abby understood. In just the short time she'd known Thomas, she too had felt the pull of his innocent presence. How much stronger must that feeling be for the man who believed himself to be the baby's father? The rest of the day passed in a strange domestic rhythm. Abby cared for Thomas while Jackson worked from his office, emerging periodically to check on them, or sometimes just to watch from doorways when he thought Abby didn't notice. There was a longing in his gaze, not directed at her, but at the tableau of normalcy she created with Thomas that evening. As Abby prepared a bottle in the kitchen, Jackson joined her. Having shed his suit jacket and tie, "I have a dinner meeting," he said, checking his watch. "I shouldn't be more than a couple of hours." "We'll be fine," Abby assured him. "Thomas and I have a hot date with Goodnight Moon and some tummy time." Jackson smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "I never thanked you properly for answering my call last night. Most people would have hung up on a stranger at that hour. Most strangers wouldn't have offered me a job that solved all my financial problems in one swoop," she countered, with a small smile of her own. "Yes. Well," he cleared his throat, "about that. I realize I acted impulsively. If you'd prefer a more traditional employment arrangement, with regular hours and—" "Mr. Bennett," Abby interrupted gently, "this arrangement works for me, truly. I don't have much tying me to regular hours right now." He nodded, seemingly relieved. "Jackson, please. If you're going to be living here part-time, I think we can dispense with formalities." After he left, Abby fed Thomas and settled into the routine she was establishing. As she rocked him to sleep, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into. That baby isn't his. Get out while you can." Abby nearly dropped her phone. With trembling fingers, she typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately, "A friend. Bennett has enemies. Powerful ones. That baby is leverage. Ask him about Project Nightshade." "What are you talking about?" Abby replied, but no further messages came. She put Thomas down in his crib and paced the nursery, debating what to do. The message felt like a trap, but ignoring it seemed equally dangerous. Who would send such a cryptic warning? Was it Jessica playing more mind games, or someone else entirely? When Jackson returned home just after 11, Abby was waiting in the living room, the mysterious text messages burning a hole in her pocket. He looked tired but satisfied, loosening his tie as he dropped his keys on the entryway table. "Thomas is asleep," she said, standing as he entered. "Has been for hours. Very peaceful night. Thank you." Jackson moved to the bar cart in the corner and poured himself a small measure of amber liquid. "Would you like one?" Abby shook her head. "No, thank you, but there's something I need to show you." She held out her phone with the mysterious messages displayed. Jackson's face darkened as he read them, his knuckles whitening around his glass. "When did you get these?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "About 2 hours ago. I didn't respond after that last one." Jackson set down his drink and took a deep breath. "Project Nightshade is classified, a defense contract my company is bidding on. Nobody outside my executive team should know about it." His eyes locked onto hers, suddenly cold and assessing again. "Which brings me back to my question from this morning. What do you know, Miss Miller?" "I know nothing about any Project Nightshade," Abby said firmly, meeting Jackson's gaze. "I'm showing you these messages precisely because I don't understand them. If I were involved in some conspiracy, why would I reveal the text to you?" Jackson considered this, his expression gradually softening from suspicion to concern. "You're right. I'm jumping to conclusions again." He sank onto the sofa, gesturing for her to sit as well. "I need to have my security team trace these messages." "You think this is serious, then?" "Not just someone playing games. Project Nightshade is a government defense initiative that very few people know about. Bennett Enterprises is one of 3 companies competing for the contract." He ran a hand through his hair. "The timing of these messages, coming right when Jessica disappears again, it's too coincidental." Abby hesitated, then asked the question foremost in her mind. "Do you think Thomas could be in danger?" The flash of fear that crossed Jackson's face was answer enough. "I'll make some calls," he said, already reaching for his phone. "We'll increase security starting tonight." Within an hour, 2 discreet but unmistakably professional security personnel had taken up positions outside the house. Jackson spent another hour on the phone in his office, his voice occasionally rising enough for Abby to catch fragments of tense conversations. Words like breach, confidential, and priority filtered through the closed door. When he finally emerged, Jackson looked haggard. "I've moved the paternity test to tomorrow morning," he announced. "I need to know for certain if Thomas is mine. You think the messages might be telling the truth, that he's not your son. I think someone is using him, and by extension me, as part of a larger scheme. Jackson paced the room. What better way to distract or manipulate me than to suddenly present me with a child? Especially with the Nightshade deadline approaching. But you said you and Jessica dated. Surely the timing could be legitimate. We were together for exactly 3 weeks, almost a year ago. The math works barely, but it's convenient. Too convenient in retrospect. He stopped pacing and faced Abby. I should have questioned it more. But when she showed up with him, you fell in love with him, Abby finished softly. Jackson nodded, a vulnerability in his eyes that made him look younger, more human. Instantly. Sleep was elusive for both of them that night. Abby checked on Thomas frequently, irrationally fearful despite the security measures now in place. Jackson worked in his office until dawn, emerging only to peek into the nursery occasionally. By morning, Abby had made a decision. As she prepared Thomas's first bottle of the day, she approached Jackson, who was nursing his 3rd cup of coffee at the kitchen counter, dark circles under his eyes. I want to come with you for the paternity test, she said. Jackson looked up, surprised. That's not necessary. I know it's not, but I feel involved now. And frankly, after those messages, I'm not comfortable letting Thomas out of my sight. A ghost of a smile crossed Jackson's face. You've known him for all of 36 hours. That's apparently all it takes, Abby replied, echoing his earlier sentiment. The medical center was private, discreet and clearly accustomed to high-profile clients. They were ushered into a plush waiting room where a doctor explained the simple cheek swab procedure. The results would be expedited, available by late afternoon. As they left the center, Abby noticed a black sedan idling across the street, its windows tinted. She instinctively tightened her hold on Thomas's carrier. Jackson, she murmured, nodding subtly toward the vehicle. I see it. His voice was calm, but his body tensed. Keep walking normally to the car. They had just reached Jackson's Range Rover when the sedan's door opened. Abby's heart leaped into her throat. But instead of a threat, a woman emerged. Tall, elegant, with precisely styled blonde hair and large designer sunglasses, despite the overcast day. Jackson, the woman called, striding toward them with purpose. We need to talk. Jackson stepped protectively in front of Abby and Thomas. Victoria, what are you doing here? Damage control as usual. The woman, Victoria, removed her sunglasses, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes that immediately flicked to Abby and the baby carrier. Is this them? Jessica's replacement and the supposed heir. Get in the car, Abby, Jackson said quietly, not taking his eyes off Victoria. Oh, don't be dramatic, Victoria scoffed. I'm not here to cause trouble. Quite the opposite. Then speak quickly. We're leaving. Victoria sighed theatrically. Fine. The board knows about the baby. They're concerned about the impact on the company, especially with the Nightshade contract in the balance. The last thing we need is a paternity scandal. There is no scandal, Jackson replied evenly, and the board should focus on their responsibilities instead of my personal life. Your personal life becomes their business when it affects share prices. Victoria's gaze shifted to Abby again. Who exactly are you anyway? Another one of Jessica's friends? Part of the scheme? She's Thomas's nanny, Jackson cut in before Abby could respond. And she knows nothing about any scheme. Neither do I, for that matter. Victoria laughed, the sound brittle. Please, Jessica shows up with a baby, right when we're finalizing the biggest defense contract in the company's history, then disappears right before the decision date. And now you've replaced her with... She gestured dismissively at Abby. This person? It's textbook, Jackson. You're being manipulated. By whom, Victoria? And to what end? Jackson's patience was clearly wearing thin. By Archer Global, obviously. Victoria said the name as though it explained everything. They're desperate after losing the last 2 government contracts to us. This is exactly their style of corporate espionage. Abby felt Thomas stirring in his carrier. Shielding him from the increasingly heated conversation, she gently rocked the carrier with one hand while straining to follow the exchange. Archer Global, she'd seen the name in business news, Bennett Enterprises' main competitor. That's quite a conspiracy theory, Jackson was saying, his tone dismissive but his expression troubled. Jessica has nothing to do with Archer. Are you sure about that? Victoria produced a tablet from her designer bag and handed it to Jackson. Take a look at who she had lunch with 3 days before she first contacted you about the pregnancy. Jackson's face darkened as he swiped through whatever was displayed on the screen. Without a word, he handed the tablet back to Victoria and turned to Abby. We're leaving now. The drive back to the house was tense, with Jackson making several phone calls using the car's privacy mode, which prevented Abby from hearing the conversations. Thomas, perhaps sensing the tension, began to fuss. It's okay, little one, Abby murmured, reaching back to stroke his cheek. Everything's going to be all right. Jackson ended his last call as they pulled into the driveway. I've arranged for a complete background check on Jessica Thompson, he said, his voice tight. More thorough than the preliminary one I did when she first approached me. Who was that woman? Victoria? Victoria Winters. My CFO and... He hesitated. My ex-wife. Abby blinked in surprise. Oh, we've maintained a professional relationship. The divorce was amicable. His clipped tone suggested otherwise. Victoria can be intense, but she's rarely wrong about business matters. And she thinks Thomas is part of some corporate espionage plot. Jackson sighed, some of the tension leaving his body. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud, but in our industry, competition for government contracts is brutal. Billions of dollars are at stake with Project Nightshade. Inside the house, they found Jackson's assistant, Meredith, waiting with a folder of papers. She raised an eyebrow at Abby's presence but addressed her boss directly. The information you requested, Mr. Bennett, and the lab called. They're expediting the results as requested, but it will still be several hours. Thank you, Meredith. That will be all for today. After his assistant left, Jackson spread the papers across his desk while Abby settled Thomas for his nap. When she returned to the office, she found Jackson staring at a photograph, his expression unreadable. What is it? She asked. He handed her the photo without a word. It showed Jessica, smiling intimately across a restaurant table at a distinguished-looking older man. That's Harold Archer, Jackson said flatly, CEO of Archer Global and my chief competitor for the Nightshade contract. This doesn't prove anything, Abby pointed out, though the image was certainly suggestive. Maybe they just know each other socially. 3 days after this lunch, Jessica contacted me about the pregnancy. A pregnancy she'd supposedly been hiding for 5 months. He shook his head. I was an idiot not to question it more thoroughly. You wanted to believe you had a son, Abby said gently. There's nothing idiotic about that. Jackson's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. The call was brief, his responses terse. When he hung up, his face had gone pale. The lab? Abby guessed. No, he stood abruptly. That was my security team. They found Jessica. Where? In a hotel downtown. With Harold Archer. Jackson grabbed his keys. She's agreed to meet me there. Apparently, she has something important to tell me. Something she'll only say in person. I'm coming with you, Abby said immediately. Jackson shook his head. No, it's too risky. Stay here with Thomas where it's safe. What if this is a trap? What if that's exactly what they want? To separate you from Thomas? The thought clearly hadn't occurred to him. You think they might try to take him while I'm gone? I don't know what to think anymore, Abby admitted. But I do know I don't want to be here alone with him if someone does come looking. After a moment of consideration, Jackson nodded. All right, we'll all go. But you and Thomas will stay in the car with my security team while I speak with Jessica. The hotel was upscale but discreet, the kind of place that prided itself on protecting guests' privacy. Jackson's security detail took positions around the vehicle as he reluctantly left Abby and Thomas in the car. I'll be quick, he promised. 15 minutes tops, but 15 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Thomas began to fuss, hungry for his afternoon bottle. Abby prepared one from the supplies they'd brought, all while watching the hotel entrance with growing concern. Something's wrong, she told the security guard beside her. He said 15 minutes. The guard checked his watch. Give it a bit longer, ma'am. These matters can be complicated. Just as Abby was about to insist they check on Jackson, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, the same one that had messaged her before. They've got him. 10th floor, room 1042. Hurry. Abby's heart hammered against her ribs as she showed the security guard the message. We need to go in now. Ma'am, I can't leave you and the baby unprotected, and I can't take you both into a potentially dangerous situation. Then call for backup. But do something. Abby insisted. Mr. Bennett could be in trouble. The guard radioed his colleague, who had been patrolling the perimeter. Within moments, they formulated a plan. One would stay with Abby and Thomas in the car, while the other investigated room 1042. "Wait," Abby said, as the second guard prepared to enter the hotel. "What if this is what they want? To separate us even further?" The guards exchanged glances, clearly weighing the possibilities. The first guard spoke into his radio again, presumably to his superiors, while Abby gazed anxiously at the hotel entrance. Thomas, sensing her distress, began to whimper. "Change of plans," the guard finally announced. "Backup is 3 minutes out. Once they arrive, we move as a unit, all of us, including you and the baby. You'll stay behind us, and if there's any sign of danger, you'll retreat immediately." "Understood." Abby nodded, already gathering Thomas's essentials into his diaper bag. She could feel adrenaline coursing through her veins, sharpening her senses. Whatever was happening, she wasn't going to let anything happen to Thomas or to Jackson. The backup team arrived, 2 more professionally nondescript men who moved with the same efficient purpose as the original guards. They entered the hotel as a coordinated unit, with Abby and Thomas secured in the middle of their protective formation. The elevator ride to the 10th floor was the longest 30 seconds of Abby's life. Thomas remarkably had quieted, his wide eyes taking in the tense faces surrounding him. "Stay behind us," one guard reminded her as the doors opened. The hallway was empty and silent, the plush carpet muffling their footsteps as they approached room 1042. One guard positioned himself to knock, while the others formed a protective barrier around Abby and Thomas. The sharp rap on the door echoed in the hushed corridor. No response. The guard knocked again, louder this time. "Mr. Bennett? Security!" After another moment of silence, one guard produced a phone and dialed. They could hear a ringtone from inside the room, but no one answered. "Stand back," the lead guard instructed, pulling out a key card. Hotel security provided an override. The door swung open to reveal an elegantly appointed suite and complete chaos. Furniture was overturned, papers scattered across the floor, a lamp shattered. But no sign of Jackson, Jessica, or anyone else. "Clear the rooms," the lead guard ordered, and 2 of his team moved swiftly to check the bedroom and bathroom, while the others secured Abby and Thomas near the exit. "All clear," came the report moments later. "No one's here." Abby surveyed the disheveled room, her gaze landing on a familiar item lying amidst the chaos, Jackson's phone. The screen cracked, but still displaying missed calls from his security team. "He wouldn't leave this behind willingly," she said, pointing without touching it. Something happened here. One of the guards knelt to examine something on the carpet, dark droplets that made Abby's stomach clench. "Blood," he confirmed grimly. "Not much, but recent." "We need to find him," Abby insisted, clutching Thomas closer. The baby, sensing her distress, began to fuss again. "What about hotel security cameras?" "Already on it," the lead guard assured her, speaking rapidly into his communication device. "We're sealing the building and reviewing footage now." Minutes later, they had their answer. Security footage showed Jackson entering the room 40 minutes earlier. 20 minutes after that, footage captured 3 men, one supporting a stumbling Jackson between them, exiting through a service corridor. Their faces were carefully angled away from the cameras. "He's been taken," the guard confirmed, his professional demeanor not quite masking his concern. "We've got partial plates on a vehicle they used, and we're tracking it now." "What about Jessica?" "Or Harold Archer?" Abby asked. No sign of either in the footage from the past 2 hours. As the security team coordinated their response, Abby felt her phone buzz again. With trembling fingers, she checked the message. "Still have the baby." "Good, bring him to Franklin Park near the zoo entrance. 1 hour, come alone or Bennett dies." Abby's blood ran cold. She wordlessly showed the message to the security lead, who immediately began issuing new orders. "They're after the child. We need to move to a secure location immediately." "We need to do what they say," Abby countered. "They'll kill Jackson if we don't. Ms. Miller, this is clearly a trap. So our priority has to be protecting you and the child." "And what about Jackson?" "He's only in this situation because of Thomas." She looked down at the baby in her arms, his innocent face unaware of the danger surrounding them. There has to be a way to save them both. Back in a secure room at Bennett's corporate headquarters, Abby paced anxiously while the security team developed a strategy. Thomas, exhausted from the day's stress, had finally fallen asleep in a makeshift crib. "They're making a mistake," she insisted to Daniel Pierce. the head of Bennett's corporate security who had joined them. This whole thing, it doesn't make sense. If Archer Global wanted to sabotage the Nightshade contract, why involve a baby? Why the elaborate charade with Jessica? Pierce shook his head. Corporate espionage takes many forms. The goal is usually to compromise or distract key executives during critical negotiations. But this goes beyond distraction. This is kidnapping, potentially murder. Abby stopped pacing as a realization hit her. What if this isn't about the contract at all? What if it's personal? Explain. Jackson mentioned that his divorce from Victoria was amicable, but she didn't seem particularly friendly today. And she knew exactly where to find us at the medical center. Abby's mind was racing now. What if Victoria is working with Archer? She's the CFO. She would know all about the Nightshade project. Pierce's expression shifted from skepticism to consideration. It would explain how information was leaking. We've suspected an insider. Just then, one of the security team hurried in. We've got something. The paternity test results came in. Already? Abby asked, surprised. Mr. Bennett paid for the expedited service. He handed a sealed envelope to Pierce, who promptly opened it. Pierce scanned the document, his eyebrows rising. Well, this changes things. What is it? Abby demanded. Thomas is not Bennett's son. Pierce looked up grimly. But the DNA comparison shows another match in the system, Harold Archer. Thomas is his son. The revelation landed like a thunderbolt. Jessica was working with Archer from the beginning, Abby realized aloud. She tricked Jackson into thinking Thomas was his. Not just Jessica, Pierce corrected, still reading the report. There's more. The maternal DNA markers indicate Thomas's mother isn't Jessica Thompson. What? Then who? Pierce's expression was grave as he looked up. Based on familial markers in our corporate security database, the most likely mother is Victoria Winters Bennett. Abby sank into a chair, struggling to process this twist. Victoria and Harold Archer had a child together, and used Jessica to pass him off as Jackson's. She shook her head in disbelief. But why? What could they possibly gain? Control of Bennett Enterprises, Pierce said flatly. If Jackson claimed Thomas as his heir, then was conveniently removed from the picture, Victoria could act as guardian, controlling the company through Thomas's inheritance, Abby finished, the horrifying plan becoming clear. And with the Nightshade contract secure under her leadership, Archer Global could negotiate a partnership instead of competing, Pierce nodded. It's diabolical but clever. Abby's gaze drifted to Thomas, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the machinations surrounding his very existence. He's just an innocent baby. He didn't ask to be part of this. No, he didn't, Pierce agreed solemnly. And neither did Bennett. The next hour was a flurry of activity as Pierce's team coordinated with law enforcement. The trap was set at Franklin Park, but with a critical modification to the kidnappers' plan. Instead of Abby bringing Thomas alone, a precision team would be waiting. Abby insisted on being involved. I need to be there, she told Pierce. They're expecting to see me with the baby. We'll use a decoy, Pierce countered. They'll know. And they might kill Jackson immediately. Her voice cracked slightly. Please, I care about him too. After lengthy debate, a compromise was reached. Abby would appear at the designated meeting point, but with a realistic doll wrapped in Thomas's blankets, instead of the actual baby, who would remain secure at headquarters. She would wear a wire, and the moment Jackson was located, the tactical team would move in. As dusk fell over Franklin Park, Abby approached the zoo entrance, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain anyone nearby could hear it. The bundle in her arms felt unnaturally still compared to Thomas's living warmth, but in the dim light, it would pass for a sleeping infant. Her phone buzzed with new instructions. Stone bench by the south gate. Come now. Abby spotted the bench and a familiar figure seated there, her elegant profile unmistakable even in the fading light. Victoria, Abby said as she approached, trying to keep her voice steady. Victoria Winters turned, her composed features betraying only mild surprise. You're more resourceful than you look, she remarked coolly. I expected Jessica's little minion to run to the police, not figure things out. Where's Jackson? Victoria gestured vaguely toward a maintenance building nearby. Resting comfortably, or as comfortably as one can with a mild concussion. She stood, extending her arms. Now hand over my son. Your son, Abby repeated.
Not Jessica's, not Jackson's.
A flicker of genuine emotion crossed Victoria's face as she gazed at the bundle. Harold and I never intended for things to go this far. The plan was simply to distract Jackson during the nightshade negotiations. Jessica was supposed to keep him occupied with paternity drama, nothing more. Her expression hardened. But then Jackson actually fell in love with Thomas, started talking about changing his will, making succession plans. So you decided to eliminate Jackson completely and use Thomas to take control of the company, Abby concluded. Business is business, Victoria said with chilling detachment. Now the baby, please. Harold is waiting. I want to see Jackson first. Victoria's patience visibly thinned. You're not in a position to negotiate, Nanny. She snapped her fingers, and two men emerged from the shadows near the maintenance building. Get Bennett, she ordered one of them. To the other she said, and search her for a wire. Abby's pulse raced as the man approached her. This wasn't part of the plan. Just as his hands reached toward her, a voice rang out through hidden speakers. Victoria Winters, you're surrounded by federal agents. Release Jackson Bennett and surrender immediately. Chaos erupted. Victoria lunged for the bundle in Abby's arms, while her accomplices bolted. In the struggle, the blanket fell away, revealing the doll beneath. Victoria's face contorted with rage. Where is my son? She screamed, just as tactical officers converged on the scene. In the confusion, Abby broke free and sprinted toward the maintenance building. Inside, she found Jackson bound to a chair, a gash on his forehead but very much alive. Abby? He mumbled groggily as she quickly untied him. Thomas is safe, she assured him, helping him to his feet. He's at your headquarters with Pierce. Jackson sagged against her with relief. I heard everything through the door, Victoria. An archer. I know, Abby soothed, supporting his weight as they moved toward the exit. It's over now. Outside, law enforcement had secured Victoria and one of her accomplices. The scene was controlled chaos, as Jackson was guided to a waiting medical team. Stay with me? He asked Abby, his hand gripping hers. Of course, she promised. But Thomas will be brought to us, Jackson assured her. Pierce knows what to do. 3 months later, Abby stood in Jackson's living room, now their living room, watching as he gently rocked Thomas on the terrace overlooking the Boston skyline. The late autumn sunlight gilded them both, highlighting how much they'd all changed since that fateful wrong number in the middle of the night. The aftermath had been tumultuous. Victoria and Harold Archer faced multiple felony charges, from corporate espionage to kidnapping. Jessica Thompson, tracked down in Miami, had turned state's evidence, revealing she'd been hired by Victoria to play her part in the scheme, and Thomas, sweet, innocent Thomas, had become the center of a complex legal situation. As Harold Archer's biological son but born under fraudulent circumstances, his future had hung in the balance until Jackson made an unexpected decision. You're sure about this? Abby had asked when Jackson first proposed adopting Thomas legally. More sure than I've been about anything, he'd replied without hesitation. Biology doesn't make a father. Love does. The court had agreed, granting Jackson full custody while mandating supervised visitation for Thomas's biological father, currently awaiting trial if he ever chose to pursue it. As for Abby and Jackson, their relationship had evolved from employer-employee to partners in both life and Thomas's upbringing. What began with a wrong number had transformed into exactly the right connection. Jackson turned, catching Abby watching them. His smile, once rare but now increasingly common, warmed her heart as he crossed the terrace to join her. He's finally asleep, Jackson whispered, carefully transferring the dozing infant to her arms. He always fights it when the sun's still up, Abby noted fondly, breathing in Thomas's sweet baby scent. Jackson's arms encircled them both, his chin resting on her shoulder. I got a call from the lawyer today. The adoption paperwork is almost complete. That's wonderful, Abby murmured, leaning back against his chest. There's something else, Jackson continued, a new note in his voice making her turn to look at him. The lawyer asked if we should prepare a second set of adoption papers. For you, Abby's breath caught. Jackson, I know it's fast, he acknowledged, taking Thomas from her and setting him gently in his nearby bassinet before taking both her hands in his. But nothing about us has been conventional from the start. I don't need more time to know that I love you, Abby Miller. That I want us to be a family, you, me, and Thomas, tears pricked at Abby's eyes. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking you to be Thomas's mother, legally and in every other way," Jackson clarified, his expression earnest. "The marriage proposal comes next, if you're amenable, but I thought we should do this one step at a time." Abby laughed softly, joy bubbling up inside her. "Since when are you so cautious?" "The man who hired a complete stranger as a nanny because she answered a wrong number." "Fair point," Jackson conceded with a smile, drawing her closer. "In that case, Abby Miller, will you become Thomas's mother and my wife?" "Not necessarily in that order." "Yes," she whispered against his lips. To both questions. As the sun set over Boston, casting long golden rays across their embrace, Abby reflected on the strange, wonderful journey that had brought them here. The misdial in the darkness had led to the brightest future she could imagine. Proof that sometimes the wrong number could be exactly the right call.